We welcome for the first time here to the Fox 10 Talk streaming studio on YouTube and many other places, the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tom Horne. Thanks for joining us.
It's a privilege to be with you, and I'm happy to come back anytime you want me.
Well, that's great.
He said that before the interview, Ron.
Oh,
Tom, we're going to hold it to you, Tom.
Yeah. Well, only one of us has a master's degree. Is it in education, Syleste? Or
Public policy.
Public policy.
Public policy.
So this is the brain you're going to want to be dealing with today.
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk about the state of Arizona schools. Are you satisfied, not satisfied with kind of where the grade levels are and the scoring that we're seeing? And if you're not, what kind of a plan do you have to make it better?
Okay. The answer is I'm not. The reason I ran for office again, because I was superintendent from 2003 to 2011, and then I was attorney general, and I decided to run again in 2022. And a bunch of friends came over and says, "Tom, you're crazy. You make a lot more, multiples more money as a lawyer, and you were attorney general. You're going backwards." And I said, "No, the big problems in the schools. That's what I absolutely have to work on. Definitely not satisfied. We have a long way to go." And it's really an 8-year job rather than a 4-year job. And so that's why I'm running for re-election.
You know, historically, we have, in terms of education in Arizona, our schools, I'm a mom of 3 kids, school-age kids, you know, our schools haven't ranked very high.
Correct.
What do you think is the issue? Is it teacher pay? Is it curriculum? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, for one thing, it's focus of leadership. So the people that, between the 2 times I was superintendent, the other superintendents, their focus tended to be on other things rather than academics. My focus is on academics. We did very well from 2003 to 2011, but then things went down, and I need to get them back up again. So I would say the first cause is lack of academic leadership. If you have good leadership, then the academics will come around.
You're talking about on school campuses.
And in the Office of State Superintendent of Schools.
Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the controversial issues that are out there. DEI is suddenly, you know, in the forefront of everybody's mind because of what we hear coming out of Washington in terms of, you know, what you can and can't do. What can you do? What can't you do? And what steps are you taking to try to be in compliance with what's coming out of D.C.?
Yeah, well, for me, it's not new. I started fighting it in 2008 in the form of CRT, when Tucson Unified had something called ethnic studies. And I wrote a bill for the legislature to put a stop to it. They passed it. I enforced it. We did put a stop to it until I went on to be attorney general. And then it started coming back again. So it's a perpetual fight. We have to keep fighting it all the time. And I have that fight now at the state board because during that interim when other people were in office, the teacher standards included elements of DEI. So I want to get it out of there, partly as a philosophical matter, and partly because with Donald Trump as president, he's threatened to take away federal funding.
What kind of money are we talking about?
$866 million a year. So that's big money. It would be a catastrophe for our state.
And how do they judge whether or not you're in compliance?
Well, they have said they will cut off funding for individual schools or districts that have it. So I get information, I report it to them. They haven't yet authorized me to cut off that funding, but I'm ready to do it as soon as they authorize me to, because I believe passionately in the philosophical question. I think the big philosophical divide in our country now are between people like myself who believe in individual merit and the people who believe alternatively in racial entitlements. And the problem with racial entitlements is they don't do anything to encourage hard work or conscientiousness or creativity. And so if they were to win that contest, we would become a mediocre country and China would become the major power and they'd call the shots, if you can imagine a world like that. Okay. So I'm fighting for the concept of individual merit. We're all individuals. In my mind, race is not relevant to anything about people. It's what you know, what you can do, what's your character, that kind of thing.
We could talk about this for a long time. Let's jump on to this next topic on ESA funding.
Yes.
Your thoughts on it, the direction of the state, and what the program looks like. There have been a lot of allegations and accusations of misuse with certain families. Your thoughts on that topic?
Okay, well, when I took office this time around, there were, I think there were 11,000 families. Now it's 97,000. So it's grown a lot in the 2.5 years that I've been there. But the governor is not a fan. So she, by threatening vetoes, she stops the legislature from giving us the funding to increase our staff. So we're doing it with the same staff that at 11,000 with 97,000. So
wow.
But they're working heroically, but you're going to have problems in that kind of a situation.
If I could just make this comment, I think, and I just thought of this, and just to kind of get your thoughts, we were talking about the DEI issue and the big number, the increase of families using ESA funding. I think a lot of families, in just my world as a mom and talking to other parents, people don't like the DEI policies. So then they feel forced to then go to the ESA, and to have Arizona has been a leader in school of choice.
Yeah, we are the leader for the country.
Around the country.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe if we can get that DEI issue resolved, then you may see that number of ESA families drop.
Could be.
Because then they may feel more safe sending their children to schools.
Nothing would make me happier than an increase in the performance of our public schools, so that parents would want their kids to stay there. But if they feel the needs of their child are not being met, they have a right to find a school that does. And I can't understand how anyone would oppose that unless they're so immersed in their ideology that they forget about what's in the interest of the students.
What kind of feedback do you get from parents who are in the ESA program? Obviously, if it's grown from 11,000 to 97,000, there must be something about that they feel is working for their children.
Yes, the overwhelming majority are very positive. You get a small number. I counted at about 150 or so that like to complain. But out of 97,000, that's a tiny percentage. I think, I have a primary opponent now who drew the wrong conclusion from those few people who were unhappy. My principles are that all of our expenditures have to be for a valid educational purpose and at a reasonable cost according to market prices to meet the needs of the student. My primary opponent says I don't have the authority to do that, and she would just pay anything. Well, if you just pay anything, you'd end up, believe it or not, these are requests we've gotten, a $5,000 Rolex watch, a $24,000 golf simulator. Somebody actually asked for education funds for a vasectomy testing kit. So it would be. So I think if you had a superintendent who was willing to pay anything, it would be a mess. And so I'm fighting to keep not only the program growing and vibrant and useful, but reasonable, legal, because otherwise we could lose the program.
All right, so let's talk about school closures. It has been one of the big stories that we have talked about. And by the way, you look at it, you've gone from 11,000 students to 97,000 that are now moving their kids somewhere, either homeschooling or going to a charter school or a private school, et cetera.
80%.
What is happening in our public schools, and is there more that could be done to prevent actual closures of schools?
Well, first of all, let me just go back for a second, because you asked me what am I doing to help increase the academics in the public schools.
Right.
And the answer is I have 15 initiatives, all directed at helping the schools do better academically. So I'm working very hard on it. I'm personally involved in every one of the 15 initiatives. And if there's time, I can tell you about some of them. But
we have 2 minutes till the commercial, so we don't have a lot of time. But go ahead.
But to specifically answer the question that you asked me, which was
school closures.
School closures, yeah. School closures are nothing new. I spent 24 years on a school board, and we had closures because some neighborhoods grow older and there are less kids, and so we would close schools because you want 100% use of your schools. If you're only using like 80%, you're wasting money because there's fixed costs of a school. And so I paid a political price for it, but I thought it was the only responsible thing to do. Now, we also have a problem, I think, of left-wing school boards that instead of emphasizing academics, they emphasize things like social emotional learning or DEI, that kind of thing. And some parents don't want that for their kids. So I think if the school boards would focus on academics, there many less kids would be leaving the schools.
It's almost like the issue of immigration in a way. I feel like that's so multifaceted. You have aging neighborhoods where people don't have school-age children anymore, like in areas of Mesa and Kyrene. And so those families are staying, and then obviously they don't have children to send to those schools.
But Kyrene is a good example of a left-wing school board where parents are leaving because they don't want to subject their kids to that.
Okay, I wonder if you can stick around after the break. We've got just a couple of more minutes here. Let's see. We've got about a minute and a half left. What's happening with the issue of trans athletes in sports in Arizona?
Okay, so I'm fighting that in court to keep boys out of girls' sports. You see news stories about girls that worked hard to make the team or get a scholarship or even go to the Olympics, and then they have to compete against a male who has natural advantages, and they're devastated. Their dreams are shattered by an unfair situation. We had a law preventing it in Arizona, but two big New York law firms sued to call that law unconstitutional. The Attorney General refused to defend our law, which is she doesn't know what her duties are. She's supposed to be doing that. So I'm defending with education funds. I'm one of 4 defendants that was named as a state superintendent, and the other 3 conceded. So I'm the only one fighting this in court. But I'll take it to the U.S. Supreme Court if necessary. We are determined not to have boys in our girls' sports.
Okay, time for that break. Take a look here. That's some kind. Are you a fisherman at all? I mean, would you like fly fishing? Hi, everybody. It's Ron and Celeste, and I almost feel like we're watching remember that old movie, A River Runs Through It?
Oh, yeah.
Who wouldn't love to be up in the Yellowstone country of Wyoming?
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, for sure.
I could be sitting in one of those boats with waders on, cruising through the water. It'd be awesome.
Good. Telling stories about the ones that got away. So we have the superintendent here. It's Tom Horne. A couple 3 additional issues, and then we'll let you go. What about, so you laid out your thinking on trans athletes. What about those young people who have transitioned? Say it is a male who has transitioned to a female. What about them? Can they still participate in boys' sports if they were born biologically as a male? Do you have a policy on that?
Well, you have to understand we're a local control state. So I can't set the policy. I can argue in court for it, and I can try to influence them. But it's up to the school boards, the local school boards. So that's why it's so important to elect academically oriented school board members rather than left-wing ideological school board members. But even with the younger kids, boys have an advantage over the girls, because that's my case is about that. It's young kids.
You're saying your case, if it goes all the way to the Supreme Court?
Yes. Well, I'm fighting it currently in the lower courts,
right.
And they chose to have young kids to try to break through on this issue, but the fact is, any elementary school gym teacher, anyone who's seen kids on the playground knows, even with young kids, boys have an advantage over girls with athletics.
What are your thoughts on creating, and I've read this in some of the, stories around the country and the world, in fact, creating a separate group entirely, like you have girls sports, boys sports, and then maybe you have transgender sports or transgender clubs where those children can then join.
Or you could have if you have mixed teams, that's okay if the mixed teams are playing against mixed teams.
Yeah.
But for the individual athletes, it's been devastating for girls to have to compete against boys, and I think it's terribly unjust. I've been against it for many years.
Just wanted to ask before we let you go about school safety. I know efforts have been made. You even see it in the construction of newer schools to try to create a safer environment, a more secure environment. But what's being done in terms of the time that you've had in office or that you have planned for the future to just ensure the safety of our kids when they're in school?
I've been pushing very hard to get police into the schools. When I took office this time around in 2023, there were 190. I've gotten up to 565.
Wow.
So, because I think our first obligation is to be sure that kids are safe. There are no massacres in police stations because the police can defend themselves. And we owe it to our kids and the teachers and staff to defend them, so that they're not subject to some maniac coming in and killing.
You know, that was one of the questions that Sweet Pea had. We have a very active chat on YouTube, and they're asking questions. One of them was about school safety. I recall during COVID here in the Valley of the Phoenix metro area, that was one of the times, obviously, they cut the police from schools because school wasn't in session. When you talk about recruiting those for schools and protecting them and adding officers to campuses, we're already trying to boost the number, I think, of police on our regular streets. How do you work on also boosting the number of police on school campuses?
Well, we had a problem because we would fund a school. The Department of Education pays. It doesn't cost the schools anything. All they have to do is ask. Everyone who's asked has gotten a policeman. But then they might be funded, but they may have trouble because the local police department can't. So we got a bill. We sponsored a bill in the legislature, and it got passed to enable retired police officers to work in the schools, because they have all the skills necessary to do that. And we give a lot of training. We use very highly skilled trainers. We have the best training in the country because it takes special skills to be able to defend kids if a maniac comes in to kill them.
Well, we appreciate your time today. Thank you for staying over. And I'm sure we'll be in touch with you as other major issues come along.
I'm available anytime you want.
Okay. Ron.
There you go.
We got Tom's digits.
Hey, well, if the streaming show goes from 2 hours to 5,
get ready, Tom. Get ready.
Okay, thanks very much.